Okay, thank you. I am going to ask at this time Tim DeLucia come up. He is the Vice President of the Victor Central School District, a school board. And I had the opportunity to work aside with him for 6 years on the Victor School Board. And if you think that running for governor and that the governor is the toughest job in the state, I promise you a school board member is probably has a little more toughness to that, a little more challenge. But in all seriousness, Tim DeLucia is also, by the way, I woke up this morning to a Facebook post of Tim and his beautiful wife celebrating 44 years anniversary. Look at this picture. So congratulations. And I'm sure he has a question that will get you thinking. You may have to come up here. It's kind of tight. There you go. Sorry about that.
Okay, thank you for that embarrassment. First, I'd like to thank you, gentlemen, for being here and for running to give us a better choice. So thank you for that. I have been on the school board for 23 years. So yes, I am an old guy. I'm often like to say I'm the senior member of our board for every definition of that term. Because there are so many restrictions on the revenue side of school board budgets due to mandates and tax caps, and of course the annual vote where the voters need to approve our budget, it would be helpful for districts to have the ability to set up reserve accounts for TRS, Teacher Retirement System, and special education. Would you support legislation to allow for that?
Yes. I'll second what Trish said. My first elected office was school board, and that was a few years ago. And that was the toughest job. When you're dealing with your kids, there's no talking compromise about anything. Yes, I think it's. I think that's the answer I want to give. I think that another thing we have another thing in common. July, my wife and I will be married 50 years.
Good for you.
And we dated 6 years before that. And she's a very special person, as you all might imagine, by knowing me a little bit. That's I think the reserve. You've got to be able to have that flexibility. Otherwise, you're going to have deficit situations in the future. If you've got the money, hold on to it. And as far as one other point about education, I've already put in a bill to get rid of the Board of Regents. And what we've got to do is we've got to totally restructure education so that it's not this bureaucracy of regulations that your school district is required to do, which causes more and more problems in the schools, more and more cost, and you end up with not the main function of teaching, a teacher, a classroom, a book, and no more a blackboard. I guess it's a smartboard or something. But the fact of the matter is that's how you teach. And we've got to get rid of some of those regulations to unshackle the teachers and unshackle school board members in making their budget.
My answer to the question is also yes. And I want to put it in the larger framework that as the next governor of New York State, my priority on education will be, to give parents choice in how they educate their children. I think as a Republican conservative, creating opportunities for parents to have that choice is absolutely essential. Yes, supporting the local school boards and the local school districts, absolutely. But in areas where charter schools are doing well and performing well, having parents have that choice is important. I'm on the board of directors of a charter school, Family Life Academy charter schools in the South Bronx. And we started with one, now there's 3 different charter schools that are under our Family Life Academy flag, and we found that we are outperforming not only other charter schools, but the schools in the school districts. And parents have that choice in that area. And I think it's important that we structure the educational system in a way that gives parents and children the best choice.
The answer to the question is yes also, but let me talk about education. We're going to be coming out with a very deliberate plan to fix the educational system in New York State. You have 733 school districts throughout New York State. It's very excessive, it's very redundant, and it's very expensive. We'll be releasing a plan to come out with 62 school districts. One school district per county is our plan. And it's going to save millions and millions and millions of dollars. And those dollars can be redirected into the classroom where the dollars are much more needed, not in administrative duplication and duplicity. So we're going to have a very specific plan to deal with education. We can't continue to raise taxes. Every year we raise taxes and we throw more money at the state education funding. And what do we see? The result? Lower test scores. So we know for certain that more money doesn't equate to higher test scores. So I believe it's time to save money, redirect the funds into the schools where they're needed and away from administrative bureaucracy. And we also have to figure out how we're going to provide these services more effectively, right? So we're going to have a very deliberate plan for education, and we've got to change the outcomes. Putting more money in doesn't mean better outcomes. We've got to fix the structure, and we've got to begin to put county governments more in with the school districts to provide wraparound services so that the health services, the mental health services are being delivered in a much more concentrated way into our urban school systems and other school districts to help these kids and these families.
Thank you.
Thank you. Jeff Trickey. Jeff Trickey is the owner of Archer Grain LLC, and obviously in our region, agriculture is a very important part of our region, and Jeff Trickey has a question he would like to ask.
Thank you, Trish. Again, welcome, guys, to Ontario County. Appreciate coming out today. We love our Ontario County. We're rich with resources. So, a little bit about my background. Been a lifelong Republican. Have been a lifelong resident of Ontario County, and I've spent the last 20 years as a practicing mechanical engineer, and one of my loves and passion is agriculture. So I have a question here, and it fits right in, I think, with Trish's comment about some organic questions. So I'll let it roll here. So about 10 years ago, my family and I started a first-generation farm. And in doing so, we achieved an organic certification to diversify our grain farm. Today, more than 50% of our organic grains, the organic grain needs in the country and the state, are met with imported grains. Our country typically leads the world in production, and in a general sense, we have to find what to do with the production that we have. But in the organic world, it's not the case. We are currently losing revenue from our agricultural economy by ignoring these strong markets that are growing quickly, but are limited by supply. What can be done in New York State to promote the increase of supply to meet the demand?
Well, I'll start. First, thanks for your question, because it does speak to the importance of innovation and visionary initiative in government working with the private sector. I happen to serve on the Cornell Board of Trustees and have done for many years now, and at the Cornell School of Agriculture and Life Sciences, there have been a lot of work that has been done in outreach and extension in working with local, regional farmers and trying to help them address tough questions like that. There's been research done and research extended, and I think that government needs to work proactively to foster collaborations, between our institutions of higher learning where this knowledge and research exists, and those in business and working to bring new approaches and new innovations, and so that, the supply and demand questions, can be resolved effectively. We have the SUNY system, and we have, schools like Cornell and others that, government needs then to forge these partnerships so that there is greater access to the information, to the technology, to the innovation that would make all this work.
I think it's, again, about taxes and regulation. As a Republican conservative candidate, I believe that government should stay out of our boardrooms and out of our bedrooms. And it's regulations, I think, in the agricultural industry, which brought the agricultural industry to almost a grinding halt in New York State. It was a very important piece of our economy once upon a time. So I think if we get serious about eliminating regulations, whether it's agriculture or any other industry, we're going to see more businesses expanding, growing, and hiring more people. So I think it's time for government to stop regulating some of these industries. Let the market forces determine who the winners and losers are. This governor continues to try to influence the normal market forces with corporate welfare. So again, government needs to stay out of our lives as much as possible in our businesses. Let the entrepreneurs be entrepreneurs. Let them do what they know best and stop over-regulating. I'm hopeful that hemp is going to be a very, very important product in going forward. And I think hemp in New York State is going to become a very lucrative industry and will help resurrect the agricultural industry in New York State.
How to increase the supply of organic products?
Yes.
I don't know. I really don't know the answer to that question. I know what traditionally the Senate has tried to do in each budget. Every year, there's add-ons to the budget by the Senate for agriculture. And you can talk to any local senator here. The governor, everything we add in one year, when the new budget comes out, he takes it out. And it's for projects like the Cornell Cooperative Extension. It's other projects where there's cutting-edge things being done in order to make it more efficient to make products, in order to make have the highest technological advances to try to get the biggest product, no matter what that is in the agricultural field. But I'd like to talk to you. This is not something I can answer off the top of my head. And if you've got some ideas, I'd be more than happy to try to understand them and then try to adapt them.
All right, I'd be certainly glad to talk to you, to give you some insight to what we see on the production side. And as a producer, it's very unique that I have 5, 10 different buyers just ready to, basically bid to what we have to sell because, again, domestic supply is not meeting demand, and it's limiting, again, a lot of the revenue that we could have. So.
Thank you, Jeff. I ask at this time for Matt Martin to come up. Matt Martin is a small business owner, and he has a question of some challenges that he faces that he'd like to ask you.